Joining me in the studio this morning, Dr. Jonathan Tripp from Tripp Family Medicine here in Twin Falls. And he spends some time with us on most Wednesday morning, or one of his associates. And it's an opportunity to share with you some of the latest in, not only just overall wellness, but also I think to remind people about various things they should know on how to stay well. Maybe that being that little ounce of prevention goes a long way.
Yeah, today's ounce of prevention is water, water, and more water, and a little shade. So yeah, don't forget today is the threatening day of summer so far. 96 degrees is the plan, and then it cools right off in about 2 days. But today and tomorrow, good day to remember last week's discussion on avoiding heat stroke and
I got a funny story to tell you. I had the windows open the other day. It's been nice enough. I've had a lot of the windows open just to get a little breeze in the house. Today I may go with the AC, but I was listening to conversations some neighbors were having. Not that I could help it. I mean, they were loud enough where I could hear two neighbors chatting, and one was explaining that he said that he drank a lot of beer, but his doctor had told him he probably shouldn't, but said it's a good thing because this guy apparently drinks about a gallon of water a day.
wow.
And the doctor said the fact that you're drinking so much water is probably helping you negate some of the nastier effects of all that salt and dehydration you get with
With the alcohol.
right, yeah.
Yeah, cold beer is a lot of people's favorite on a hot day because it feels good going down, but it actually is a dehydrating effect. Another one that's like that, maybe not quite as severe, is our colas. Our drinks with caffeine. There was a big debate as to what's recommended by our government sources, but our lobbyists made sure that all of the sodas were included as a hydrating source. But in truth, if you have a caffeinated beverage, iced tea, it, the sodas, they're gonna drop your hydration status. So, you monster drink lovers out there, or other energy drinks, just remember that today's the day you ought to add in a lot of water.
You're also talking about stress today.
Yeah, in fact, speaking of energy drinks, things that cause stress. Well, actually, our topic is does stress cause me any health troubles? Really, I mean, we often complain about how stressed we are, and does it really have effects? And I think the answer is absolutely. What I want to be able to show is a little more of the details of what that's about. It's interesting. We have some things that we know cause trouble from a surgical standpoint, recovering from surgeries. People are often kind of surprised that orthopedic surgeons will often say, I will not operate on you until you've quit smoking. I haven't heard too many of them say, I won't operate on you until you quit stressing. Because, the surgery itself is stressful. So that is one example of where our healing from a surgery or an injury is slowed if we are under ongoing stress that is pushing us.
I saw that I think in my dad. He was a smoker, but he had siblings, and some smoked and some didn't. And he had two siblings who ended up having bypass surgery done, but they were both. One was 15 years older at the time when he had it done than my dad was. The other 17. And so I think that it wasn't just the cigarettes, but he'd come home from work and he'd be so wound up after work and complain about his work situation. And I used to think to myself, some of this is just self-imposed. I just, it was, you would think, why does he go through this?
Yeah, why, I'm guilty of pushing myself. So this is not me saying, look at how great I handle everything, but there's some basic ideas that will really help those of us that like to load up our lives. Some of it's work and some of it's hobbies and play or all of the above. And other times, some of us can't avoid it. We have family members with healthcare issues that have to be cared for, or we have financial circumstances that force us to be working more than we wish we had to. So my hat's off to those that are the survivors and the success stories. On the other hand, if you have to live with that, what can we do about it? So let me tell you a little bit about the negatives first. That's always the fun part, right? No, I tend to be more of an optimist. So this is a necessary evil, but really, when we're trying to get to the other side of saying, how do we live life better? That's why I bring up these negatives. Um, the the negative effects of stress on your health, stress, or what we often talk about anxiety, it decreases your immune system and makes you more susceptible to all kinds of illnesses. Whether it's a cold, if you're physically and emotionally stressed out, you're more likely to have shingles. So that's a viral infection. That's a reactivation of the chickenpox virus, and it manifests itself when we are physically and emotionally stressed in otherwise healthy people. So that's one that is there, has been dormant your whole life, and may show up, later on at age 40, 50, 60.
Hold on to that one. We'll get to some of the others in just a moment. We've got a short break. Dr. Jonathan Tripp is in studio with us until 9 o'clock this morning. Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. And remember, life's too short not to feel good. And we've got 61 on our way into the mid 90s today. Joining us in the studio, Dr. Jonathan Tripp from Tripp Family Medicine in Twin Falls. And we're talking stress this morning. There was a giant stress ball on the street on Saturday. Some of you may have seen it.
That's right, the big red stress ball. Yeah,
I saw that. My first inkling was, though, there was a TV show back in the 60s, and the star of the show was always being chased by a big white ball
interesting.
and called a prisoner, and the ball would be chasing him. He'd be trying to escape. I just vaguely remember seeing that show when I was a kid. But that stress ball was about the biggest stress ball I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's 11 feet high and wide, and even as 6-foot adults standing in front of it gets pretty dwarfed by it. It's an impressive ball. So those of you that were at the parade or not, we have a lot of fun. We roll it down, bring the kids out, let them push it. We have participated in Kids Fest and a couple other things around town last summer that we actually have the kids all line up like on the grass and just roll it right over top of them because it's the weight of a big beach ball. So it's not threatening, but it's big. It really is impressive in
And it
its
rolls
size.
downhill easily.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yeah, luckily I have two big boys that they and a friend of theirs pretty well controlled it down the parade route this year. That was fun.
You were mentioning how stress can bring about something like shingles, but it's not the only thing you're concerned about with people when they have stress issues.
Yeah, let me kind of give you what I say to a lot of patients. I give them this scenario. Imagine your fight or flight response. In other words, you have a scenario that gets you immediately in a position of running or fighting. So, I compare it to like you step out in the street and you almost get hit by a bus that you didn't realize was coming. That will change everything in your body. And if you've ever had an experience like that, which most of us have, you can tell there's a certain reaction in your gut. People will talk about a pit in their stomach. They have a little heart racing, but what's really going on is adrenaline gets pumped out immediately, and it is taking the blood supply and moving it to your skeletal muscles, your running and fighting muscles, and away from your gut. And it dilates your eyes, it gets your heart rate up, brings your whole body to a fast sense of alertness. And so that's great in the situation where you got to fight for your life or you need to run away to save your life because it comes and goes pretty quickly, and we often will feel jittery or shaky afterwards for several minutes. And one of the best ways to get rid of that is to exercise it off. You actually physically use your body like you were fighting or running, and that'll go away. But if we have maybe not that peak of heightened stress, but a lower level that is there all the time, we're constantly pumping out adrenaline and cortisol and hormones that our body produces that put us in that scenario and actually move the blood away from the gut and to the muscles and get your heart racing. And so this can lead to panic attacks, or it can just lead to chronic stomach troubles. So people will often say, well, I have irritable bowel syndrome. And irritable bowel has lots of practitioners and GI docs that have a more sophisticated approach to it than I do. But a large majority of people that have symptoms of chronic diarrhea or constipation or cramping, a lot of those are easily solved by taking care of the stress, managing the anxiety. So it definitely has a direct effect on your stomach as well as your heart.
I had a bishop from church one time who told us that, and I didn't really understand it fully at the time, and I guess I do now when it comes to stress, because he said that knot you get in the pit of your stomach often happens when you realize you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, or you're called to do something that's uncomfortable, even if it's the right thing. But that's a stress reaction.
It is. It is a stress reaction, whether it's that bus or whether it's something you're not comfortable doing. It absolutely is. And so, what do we do with that? If we have that all day long, we got to find a different way. We either got to do something different or add in some balance to what we're doing. So, let me throw out a couple of those. My number one for most people is sleep. And we're not just talking hours in bed. We're talking about sleep that you actually sleep, get into good REM sleep. And there's a lot to talk about, more than just one show I can talk to you about. But uh, that's a primary. If somebody is struggling with stress or anxiety, and there's some other things we'll talk about, like attention deficit, that come from stress and anxiety. They build on each other. The the sleep is the key to begin with. If I get somebody good sleep for a few nights, almost always they'll say, "Wow, there's a big decrease in my anxiety or my stress level just because I'm sleeping." Because stress interrupts sleep, stops you from getting to sleep, or wakes you up during the night. So poor sleep heightens we talk about frayed nerves from being sleep deprived, and that's exactly the feeling. Is you just your emotions, your sensation, even touch or pain is heightened because of poor sleep. So sleep's a big one. Exercise is a different one. I talked about how that fight or flight response, you really can reduce the immediate symptoms of that by doing something physical. And we often say, well, if I just sit and watch TV, or I'll play some video games, I'll distract myself. It's funny because that is a distraction, and momentarily you feel like, okay, I've had a break. But studies have found that if you're a video gamer or a TV watcher and that's your release from stress, long term it actually builds more stress. So I'm not a one that's going to recommend saying, yeah, why don't you go spend an hour a day on watching your favorite program or playing video games as your stress reliever, because long term it doesn't work. Uh, Things that do work, something as simple as deep breathing. We always joke about, take a breath, but the truth is taking some deep breaths, even taking 30 seconds to a minute to just slow down your breathing. It'll slow your heart rate. That's an effective intervention. Counting to 10, you hear that a lot of times when you're upset. Well, part of that is you're stopping your breathe, and so that's a good one. Meditation or prayer, these are ways to just simply focus in on uh, looking beyond your immediate issue, and looking more at the long term. And we kind of joke about saying, go to your happy place. And in medicine, we talk about that quite a bit, especially if we're doing a procedure that causes pain for a few minutes. And really, that's a brief form of meditation. So that's an effective one. Um, eh,
I got a
yeah.
question too about the TV as a distraction, and you pointed out short term. I want to point out too, we're 10 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Dr. Jonathan Tripp in studio with us, and we're up to 65 already. Bill Colley answering the phones and checking the temperature. But when I used to consider watching a football or baseball game stress relief,
Uh huh.
but I got to a certain point in life where I've discovered that when you get to about the eighth inning, I was more stressed.
Afterwards.
It was terrible to sit sometimes through the white knuckle game, and or you're watching a football game and your team's doing poorly and you're pounding the seat. I mean, I, I don't know that that's actually healthy for a lot of people.
No, I agree. In fact, my toughest part is watching my own kids' games. I'll admit to neither deny nor confirm, my own behavior at those games. But I'll tell you what, if it's a close game, I'm not less stressed afterwards. I'm definitely more stressed. So that fits. But not everybody reacts like that.
Sure.
Some people can actually watch those games and truly just enjoy them for the sake of the game. Those of us that get vested are usually in trouble. But let me tell you some of the other negatives. So we talked about decreased healing of tissues, so slower recovery from injuries or surgeries, increasing your risk for illnesses, whether common cold. People say, "Well, how did I catch this cold?" And I'll often ask, well, the real answer is you were exposed to it. Somebody else had it and passed it along, whether it's by coughing or touching something, and then you touched it and put it in your own mouth, things like that. But why this time? Why haven't I had it for months? Because I've been exposed to other illnesses. And the answer usually comes in looking backwards and saying, tell me about your stress level or your sleep levels for the last couple of weeks. And if they've been down, sleep, and up on stress, that's why you got it now. And so that's pretty direct correlation there. Um, Mental focus. A lot of people don't realize this, but we talk about the sleep again. If you don't sleep well, you struggle with your being on top of your game mentally. But if you're stressed and you have many things going on in your life, it is a distraction and pulls you in different directions. And it makes it very difficult to focus. It is very hard to tell the difference between somebody who has true attention deficit disorder and somebody who's just stressed. They have very, very similar symptoms. And what's interesting is some of the medicines we use for anxiety or depression or stress often assist with mental focus. So often we kind of have a two or three for one benefit out of a particular medication. The other treatment, other than just going straight to medication, I do have some over the counter things that I often use, but counseling. Love a good counselor. A counselor that's good will give you tools to handle stress and how to manage situations. Like they're invaluable. So if you find a good counselor, that's a strong recommendation to really kind of help manage stress situations. So I'd encourage anybody that wants to do that. Um, we talked about how to sleep, exercise, meditation, deep breathing. Um, it and part of it, I sound religious on this, but counting your blessings. We have a daughter who's away serving a mission, and others that go through their own life struggles. And as parents, we're starting to watch them as young adults figure out their life, and those that are still in high school. And it's really interesting because we had the perspective of going to Nicaragua last year and really seeing people that had virtually nothing. And then I helped a former missionary companion and his family get out of Venezuela, which is continuing to fall apart, and got them to Costa Rica and saw how the father really was so skinny from truly starvation, and their adult children in their early 20s really just couldn't believe the lack of understanding that my children had for the advantages and the privileges that they had. And so being able to go back to that experience and say, wait a minute, how bad do I really have it or how good do I really have it is a stress reliever. So here's a test. I dare you to count 20 things that you're actually grateful for and feel worse afterwards. I had a challenge given to me to count 100 one time, and I had my drive from the Air Force Base in Mountain Home to here, so I had time to figure out
Yeah.
100. But it was amazing how quickly I got to about 50. So try 20 and see if you don't feel better. So
We
there's
should
a
point out he was driving 80. He was not driving 100.
That's right. That
Yeah.
is true. That is true.
We've got to ask you before we close today, too, if we haven't even told people how they can contact the office.
We're trying to keep that a secret because everybody wants in there. In fact, if if you want to have some fun, I don't have the exact date because I know we're still working that out with the city, but we're going to do an evening pool party at the city pool, which is just for Tripp Family Medicine patients and their immediate families. And that is going to happen about mid-July. And so if you're interested in having a, free night at the pool and a barbecue and a lot of fun there, we're going to play some games and stuff. You better get in, better be a patient because July is only a month away.
We wanted to point out,
So,
I looked at the website yesterday, and there are reviews from patients. And one woman says it was like the first time she walked through the door was like being at home.
well, we hope it's that way. We don't want you to feel like it's a cold, sterile environment. At the same time, we want you to know you're getting top-notch medicine, but it is more of a feel of you belong, you're at home, people know you. And let me tell you how to reach us. It's phone number is 208-933-4400. That's 933-4400. Our website is tripvalleymedicine.com, and you can reach us on Facebook at Tripp Family Medicine as well.
We've got about a minute to go. Do you know anybody who's actually almost stress free in life?
Not a person that I know. So reality is learning how to balance, learning how to say no sometimes, but learning techniques that you use every darn day. And I will tell you that I've become more not religious, but more consistent in exercise. And my stress has not been less. My stress has often been more this year, but I've handled it better because I'm doing that exercise, doing that meditation, doing a few things on a consistent basis that bring me back away from the edge of, nervous breakdown or whatever. Yeah, I don't think I've truly come close to nervous breakdown, but it's just you're always feeling like, wow, could there be any more on my plate? And those things really make a difference. So I'd encourage listeners to consider some of the things we talked about today.
Want to thank you for coming by, and we'll see you or one of the associates in another week or so.
Yeah, and we'll have some fun and we'll talk more about that pool party coming up, I hope.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Jonathan Tripp, joining us in studio.
All right.
Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. And remember, life's too short not to feel good. Coming up after news at 9 o'clock, State Representative Stephen Hartkin. That's on the way on KLIX.